Welcome back. Today I'll be going over chapters 23 and 24 of Ginger Alden's book, Elvis and Ginger. Chapter 23. Elvis's next tour started on June 17th. Ginger missed the first day of the tour because she attended an event where Terry was relinquishing her Miss Tennessee crown. She says the pageant director invited Elvis to the ceremony, but Elvis declined, saying he would be a distraction there. Elvis flew Ginger out to Kansas City, Missouri on a Learjet so that she could join him on the tour. Filming for the CBS special began on June 19th in Omaha, Nebraska. Ginger says Elvis's makeup artist Al Schultz applied his TV makeup on in the bathroom of the Lisa Marie. She says she wasn't used to seeing Elvis in TV makeup and it looked, quote, caked on. She says Elvis was in a good mood, but was clearly nervous about the show. She says, quote, by the time the show started, however, his movements were slow and he seemed hazy at times. I guess that the doctor must have prescribed Elvis something to help him calm down, which would explain why Elvis was acting so sluggish. She says Elvis performed that night, and as usual, she wanted him to do his best, but she says it wasn't one of his best shows. Ginger says his next show in Lincoln, Nebraska was much better, and filming resumed for the CBS special in Rapid City, South Dakota. South Dakota. Ginger says backstage, just before the show was to start, Elvis received a plaque from the mayor honoring Elvis's concert being the first one in the city's new auditorium. She says Elvis didn't like being backstage too long. His stage costumes were hot and he would start to sweat. After receiving the plaque from the mayor, a young Native American girl presented him with a medallion of life from the Sioux Nation. Ginger says, quote, his face lit up. He had such a soft spot for children. Elvis kept complimenting the girl, trying to put her at ease, and gave her a kiss. Joe came in and urged Elvis it was time for the show to start. Elvis became annoyed and told him, when I've got something to do, I'll be there when I get there. Ginger says Elvis wanted to give something back to the girl and told an aide to make sure she received one of his scarves. During the show, Elvis pointed out Ginger. He looked at her in the audience and said, I'd like you to say hello to my girlfriend Ginger. Ginger, stand up, honey. She stood up shyly, and then Elvis jokingly said that was enough and told her to sit down. Ginger couldn't believe he introduced her to the world, referring to the CBS special filming. And she says he put on a magnificent show that night. Ginger says after Elvis passed away, people would ask why he introduced her as his girlfriend and not his fiancée since they were engaged. She says first, quote, first and foremost, Lisa didn't know about our engagement yet, and he wanted her to be prepared. She also says, quote, he knew our announcement would have huge publicity consequences, and being very protective of me and our relationship, I knew he wasn't ready to have the press focus on me even more. Ginger says one night during a show, an object came flying from the audience and it hit Elvis in the head. Elvis quickly got into a karate stance asking what it was. Ginger says everything happened so quickly, but she heard some members of the audience yelling, Frisbee! After the show, she rushed to the limo, and before Elvis got in, she heard him loudly punch the limo's window. He got inside and was super angry and said, quote, that damn Frisbee was so close to my eye, and when it hit hard, man. I almost walked off stage. Ginger says it turned out an innocent teenage boy had thrown the Frisbee after he put a note inside for Elvis. And Felton Jarvis said the boy apologized, but she says it took a long time for Elvis to cool down. She says this was a reminder to her how concerned Elvis was about his safety and how vulnerable he was on stage, even surrounded by security. Okay, so I get this young man just wanted to get a note to Elvis, but aiming for Elvis's head, not good. The tour's next stop was Madison, Wisconsin. As Ginger, Elvis, Vernon, and Sandy rode in the limo to their hotel, Ginger says they were at a red light when they saw what looked like a fight about to break out at a gas station. She said two young men were picking on another man. Elvis watched momentarily and then jumped out of the limo. She says, quote, the bodyguards followed in close pursuit. Elvis had yet to change. Still wearing his stage suit, he walked smack into the middle of the fight, assumed a karate stance, and said something to the young men. Ginger says after a minute, everyone was smiling and shaking hands, and Elvis climbed back into the limo. So remember in Priscilla's first book, something similar happened where Elvis saw a fight was about to break out between two men. And so he stepped out of his car. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was a limo or what it was, but he stepped out of his car and got in between them and did this karate kick and was able to kick the pack of cigarettes out of the man's shirt pocket. Anyway, Ginger says Elvis wanted her family to join them on tour for the last couple of shows. Terry had plans with her friend Cindy, so only her mom and Rosemary flew out to Cincinnati, Ohio. Ginger says Elvis was not happy about Terry not going, and he wanted to get to know her better now that she was no longer had Miss Tennessee obligations keeping her away. So he flew Terry and Cindy out. Ginger says, quote, I was touched that seeing my family meant so much to him, but I wasn't surprised. Family, I knew, meant a lot to Elvis. Ginger says they were staying at the Netherland Hilton that night, but a broken AC unit and terrible room service put Elvis in a bad mood. Ginger says she was in her bathroom getting ready for the show when she heard Elvis open the bedroom door and ask where she was. She stepped out into the bedroom where her mom and Rosemary were, but Elvis had taken off. Her mom said she didn't know what was going on with Elvis, but he looked upset. Ginger heard people shouting, where did he go? And when she looked into the hallway, she saw bodyguards running and she became worried. She was sitting in her room when a bodyguard called and said Elvis wanted to see her. Turns out Elvis had left the Hilton and checked into another hotel close by. She went downstairs where a fan asked her to pose for a photo, and then she was taken to the other hotel. When she saw Elvis there, he was in a better mood, and all he said was, we have air conditioning now. Ginger says the new hotel didn't have enough rooms for everyone to stay there, so he decided to go home after the show. During the show, Ginger and Rosemary stepped off stage to go to the restroom. However, the door they exited out of locked behind them. And she says she could hear Elvis begin to make introductions to his band and was worried she wouldn't be back in time in case he introduced her. Luckily, she and Rosemary found their way back in time because Elvis did introduce her at this show along with her family and Vernon and a British fan club. On their flight back home, Rosemary told Elvis what happened with the locked door, and Elvis laughed and said, quote, I would have stopped the goddamn show and looked for you. Ginger says they returned to the tour, and this time Patsy and Joe Smith joined them. She says she hadn't gotten to know Patsy well because she was always out back working, but Ginger's mom told her Patsy greeted her warmly on the plane. Ginger says during a show in Indianapolis, Elvis said, I'd like you to say hello to my girlfriend Ginger. She is something to stare at. That's it. That's enough, Ginger. He introduced the rest of her family and called them a lovely family and that he loved them. He also introduced Joe, calling her his assassin, instead of Patsy. Quote, Patsy works for my dad, and she's as nutty as a fruitcake. Ginger says when they were on board in the Lisa Marie, her mom told her Patsy had put her arm around her as they walked from the shuttle bus to the Lisa Marie, and this warmed Ginger's heart seeing Elvis's family accept her family. She says, quote, it was nice to think that some of Elvis's family was beginning to recognize us as part of his life now. Ginger says when they were back at Graceland, Elvis wanted to talk to her mom about her house again. She called her mom, and Elvis got on the phone and said, Mrs. Alden, I want you to call my father and take your house notes, payment books, or whatever you have on the house to him. He will take care of it for you. After the call ended, Ginger says her mom called Vernon, who told her to bring the payment book and any papers related to the house to his house the next day. The next night, Ginger arrived at Graceland to find Vernon and Elvis talking in Lisa's room. She says Vernon told her, quote, your mother just brought me her payment books. She doesn't have to worry about her mortgage anymore. She thanked them both, knowing the burden of a house payment had been lifted off of her mom's shoulders, and they would be eternally grateful. Chapter 24. Ginger says she and Elvis would sometimes sit on the porch at Graceland as the sun set. He'd usually bring a cigar and his jug of water and they'd talk. Sometimes they wouldn't talk at all and just sit and listen to the sounds of nature. Elvis said one night, "Listen, they're singing in unison," referring to the crickets. Ginger says, quote, "It occurred to me that when Elvis talked about music as the universal language, he wasn't just referring to humans. He heard music everywhere in all levels of life." She says with all the talk of music and listening to Elvis sing, she wished she hadn't been so self-conscious about singing. Though she says one night she and Elvis sang the song, "Since I Met You, Baby," and Elvis told her they sounded good together. Another night, Elvis invited Billy and his wife Jo to his room for a singing session. They sang the song "Way Down," which Elvis had recorded in October the prior year. She says it was the last song he would ever record. Ginger says one day after she arrived at Graceland, Elvis said Vernon asked him if Ginger was ever going to use the credit card he gave her. Ginger was surprised. She thought it would be a good thing if she didn't use it. She says she noticed too that Vernon started to come around more often when she was there. One day while Vernon was there and was distracted by something in the room, Ginger says Elvis tapped her arm and motioned for her to watch Vernon the same way Elvis had her watch Lisa a while back. She says after Vernon left the room, Elvis told her, quote, "Did you notice that it's almost as if my daddy hates to leave the room when we're together? It's going to do my daddy's heart good to see us married." She was happy and she hoped that he was right. Okay, so I don't know, when I first read this part of the book, I thought Vernon was showing up and not leaving because he didn't trust Ginger. Like when she was there, he didn't want her alone with Elvis. I don't know why I thought that, but it just, to me, it's just, I read it as Vernon thinking like, "Oh, Ginger's here. Let me go see what they're talking about." Anyway, Ginger says her mom wanted to have a backyard barbecue one afternoon, and Ginger thought this would be a great way to get Elvis out of the house. She was very disappointed, though, when he declined her invitation. She says her dad called soon after, and he and her mom got into an argument. Her mom was worried that her dad would show up at the house, so she decided to stay at a hotel for the night. And Ginger joined her because she was upset with Elvis for not wanting to come over. Ginger says she and her mom stayed up a long time at the hotel talking about her dad, and Ginger didn't get any sleep. Around 5 a.m., Dean Nicopolis called the room and told her he had gotten the hotel info from Rosemary. Then Elvis got on the phone. Ginger told Elvis why she was there, and they began talking about the barbecue that Elvis didn't want to go to. She tried to explain to him why he needed to get out more often. He told her, quote, "Ginger, you have to understand, I can't do what normal people do." She says she was confused by this because he had been to her house before and it was no big deal those times. She wondered if he thought this was going to be a big party with other people rather than her immediate family members. She thought maybe she had made herself clear on who was going to be there, so she explained it to him again. And Elvis said, "Oh, well, I like hamburgers. Maybe next time." Then he invited Ginger and her mom over to Graceland. She says the sun was coming up and she and her mom got to Graceland, and she was surprised to find Elvis had fallen asleep. And she says, quote, "It was as if he felt comforted knowing we were on our way." Ginger and her mom walked around the grounds of Graceland. They peeked into the racquetball center, and then they both went upstairs to sleep. Ginger fell asleep next to Elvis, and her mom slept in Lisa's room. When Elvis woke up, he brought her mom back into his room and apologized about the barbecue. Ginger says one night Elvis was in a, quote, somber mood, and that's when he mentioned the book his former bodyguards wrote about him. She had no idea who these guys were at the time. Elvis explained why they had written the book, saying, quote, "Just because I'm a public figure. Everyone has done good things and bad, but most of it's untrue anyway." He told her it wasn't the content that hurts, but the principle. Elvis told her he had helped Dave Hebler to become a 7th degree black belt, and that Red had punched someone in an elevator once, and Elvis suspected that happened often. The guy was going to sue Elvis for what Red did, and that Elvis had a lot of lawsuits. Elvis said, quote, "I did a lot for these people and their families. I bought them homes, helped put their kids through school. The fact that they would turn and do this to me. She says he paused, but then lightened up a bit and told her he knew the public would, would be in support of him. She says Elvis said he was going to let it pass and not make any statements about it. He said, quote, "You've got to kill it and get it behind you. If something ever bothers you, Ginger, you've got to kill it and get it behind you." She told him not to worry and that many people will see the book for what it was and that his fans will stand behind him. Ginger says she found out soon after Elvis passed away that Vernon had fired these bodyguards before she and Elvis met. She says, quote, "Elvis seemed to have arrived at a place in his mind where he had figured out how to handle this serious betrayal by people who had worked for him. From that day on, I would never hear another word from him about the book." Ginger says when Elvis felt like leaving the house, he liked to ride around fast on one of his three-wheel motorcycles. She says one night after they rode on one of his three-wheelers, he offered to give one to her. She told him she didn't have any place to store it and at her home, so she told him she'd keep it at Graceland. Ginger says Lisa would bring out Elvis's playful side whenever she was at Graceland. The three of them would take rides on her golf cart and tear through the grounds. Ginger loved these times because Elvis was so relaxed and happy. Ginger says she reminded Elvis that her niece Amber was around Lisa's age, so Elvis invited Amber to Graceland. She says Amber and Lisa got along well, and soon Amber was invited for sleepovers and social visits. Ginger says, quote, "This helped me feel like our two families were starting to blend at last and led me to know Lisa a little better." She says Lisa loved to sing, and sometimes she would find Lisa and Amber sitting on the stairs singing songs like Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. Lisa liked to play the piano, and on the rare occasions Elvis would come downstairs, he would sit and watch Lisa play the keyboard. Ginger says she knew how to play the piano by ear a little, so sometimes Elvis would have her and Lisa sit together and play the organ. One time Lisa was on the phone with Priscilla and asked Ginger to play a song on the organ. Ginger says she was embarrassed because she wasn't that good, but she didn't want to disappoint Lisa, so she played something short. Ginger says one afternoon while Elvis was sitting in his bed, he told her Lisa had come into his room earlier and asked if he loved Ginger more than Linda. He told her, quote, "Yes, but now don't forget that Linda was nice to you. She took you places and did a lot of things for you." Lisa said, "I know. I'm just happy." Then she skipped out of the room. Ginger says she hadn't told anyone outside of her family about her engagement to Elvis and only wore the engagement ring at Graceland. She would leave her ring there when she went home, feeling it was the safest place. A few days later, while Ginger was in Lisa's room, Lisa asked her if she and Elvis were going to get married. And Ginger remembered that Elvis wanted to tell Lisa about it when the time was right. So all Ginger said was, "I hope so." Ginger says Lisa immediately called her, quote, "second mommy." And Ginger later learned Lisa and a friend had been playing in Ginger's bathroom. And the girls found the engagement ring in the jewelry box, and Lisa's friend explained to her what the ring meant. Ginger says she went into Elvis's room and told him what had just happened. And she says, quote, "His look, a mixture of surprise and relief, seemed to say, 'Okay, the cat's out of the bag now. I'll talk to Lisa. Here we go.'" So Ginger doesn't actually say what his verbal response was, if he had any. She just says that he gave her this look that she assumed to mean that Lisa was okay with them getting married. Anyway, Lisa came into the room soon after and started calling Ginger Mommy. And Lisa giggled and said she was going to call Ginger Mommy in front of Priscilla. Ginger says she and Elvis gave each other knowing glances like that will go over well. She says she realized Elvis's concerns about how Lisa would take the news of their engagement was unnecessary, and Lisa seemed fine with the idea of them getting married. Ginger says one day she asked Elvis if she could take Lisa with her and Amber to Liberty Land, and he said yes. And he didn't even mention anything about taking bodyguards. Ginger figured it was because Elvis felt safer in his hometown. Ginger invited her mom and Rosemary to go too because they hadn't yet met Lisa Marie. They picked up Lisa from Graceland, and Ginger says as they were walking toward the entrance of Liberty Land, a couple stopped them and asked if that was Lisa Presley. Ginger says they had a great time at the park and on the way home stopped by a 7-Eleven. She says Lisa and Amber got out of the car before she did, but Lisa waited for Ginger, saying she always needed to have an older person with her. Ginger says, quote, a few days later, I was leaving Graceland to go home when Lisa asked if she could come with me to see Amber. I took her with me and the two of them played a little. Okay, so in Lisa's book, she said that Ginger wanted Lisa to go to Ginger's house. Ginger wanted Lisa to go. And Lisa didn't tell her dad that she was going, but that she had told other people. And when she got back to Graceland, Elvis was really mad. I noticed that Ginger doesn't say here that she cleared it with Elvis before taking Lisa. Anyway, Ginger says when Lisa saw Odyssey, Ginger's dog, Lisa wanted a dog too, immediately. And Ginger told her she'd have to ask her dad before getting one. And Lisa told her, it's okay, I don't have to ask him. Ginger told her the stores were closed, and Lisa was confused. And Ginger attributes this to Lisa being used to stores being opened specifically for Elvis. And she told Lisa again that Elvis needed to give the green light on getting a dog. Ginger says Lisa smiled, but she knew Lisa wasn't happy about what she had just said. Ginger says, quote, she then took a nearby pen and a piece of paper, writing, come on, and a few choice words of protest. So Ginger doesn't exactly say exactly what these choice words were. So I'm very, very curious. Ginger says by the time they got back to Graceland, Lisa had forgotten all about the puppy. Ginger says, quote, the more time I spent with Lisa, the more aware I became that Lisa knew full well what a special place she held in the world as Elvis's daughter. Lisa had leader-type qualities and took charge with other children, including when Amber was there. Ginger says one day one of the kids told Elvis that Lisa had called Nurse Tish an inappropriate name, and he immediately summoned Lisa to his bedroom. He gently scolded Lisa, and she began to cry. Then Elvis looked hurt, and Ginger couldn't tell who was more upset, Lisa or Elvis. That's it for chapter 24. Stay tuned for chapter 25. This is where Elvis will tell Ginger what he wants her to do with Graceland if anything were to ever happen to him. And then Ginger will also talk about the ice cream incident. See you then.